This is Selling Susquehanna with Lisa Barrick, your guide to the heart of Pennsylvania real estate. Mike from Sunbury writes, "Hey Lisa, what are your predictions for 2026?
Yeah, I mean, the predictions are really good for this year and the economy and all that kind of stuff. The rates are down. They're anywhere from like a 6.125 to, with some of the programs, you're getting under 6%. The thing that we need here right now is obviously we need more inventory, but that'll come. It's typical at this time of year that inventory is a little low because not that many people want to put their homes on the market in particular during the holidays. And for commercial, it's not the greatest time to sell commercial enterprise, when people are out spending money on other things. So things are starting to uptick already this week. Like my business is increased. People are like, okay, we're ready. Let's get back to it. So I expect inventory to definitely increase. I'm always nervous in this area. Like when you hear about the trends, like what the economy is going to do, what the market's going to be like, you're getting a bunch of, prognosticators from all over the country. So not everything, I always talk about this, not everything necessarily pertains to our valley. It would be nice, but the thing that I always worry about in our area, we have so few major big employers that our economy just hinges on, not as many, like we don't have, I don't know, it'd be nice to have like a naval base, just giving an example, something like that, or AT&T or IBM or, things like that. So I just always get nervous about hiring trends and what's going on with that. And those kind of economic indicators, but we'll see. Everything thus far is positive. We had one of our local lenders in the other day, Chris Romig from Citizens in Northern, and I'm proud of myself for remembering what it's called because all the banks locally have been bought out or changed like in the past few months, and that's actually my bank, and I can never remember. It was Susquehanna Community Bank, and I can never remember what it's called. So I think I finally got it. I think I finally got it down. But anyway, he was hearing really positive things in the market, and he was talking about some general economic indicators and stuff like that. So I'm feeling positive. For the beginning of the year.
Alicia from Shamokin writes, "How do you respond to sellers in 2026 who compare the pricing of their homes to those that sold in 2020 and 2021?
I've actually had this conversation multiple times. Some, and some of them have just been casual situations like over the holidays, socializing and seeing people. And, everybody talks about real estate. And people saying like, well, we're thinking, so-and-so down the street sold their house for whatever amount, in 2020 or in 2021, and so I'm sure we could get such and such for our house. Now, that kind of thing happens all the time. People always assume their house is nicer than the other person's house, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's anytime. But since COVID, it's even worse. And I say to people, well, maybe kind of depends on more recent sales. And they're kind of like, well, so-and-so got, and they get it like offended. And I'm like, listen, an appraiser who has to ultimately, in most cases, determine the value of your home to validate it for a lender if you're getting financing, they're only going to look back on sales from 6 months prior. They're not going back 5 years to compare comparable sales. So what's relevant is what's sold in the last 6 months. If you have a really unique property, something that's really unusual and hard to find comparable sales for, they may go back a year if they have to. more likely they'll go outside of your specific area, maybe to other neighboring school districts and things like that, and they'll adjust their valuations based on, adjustments for school districts in different areas and town, things like that. But they're not looking back 5 years. So just because Joe Schmo down the road sold his house for a really inflated price doesn't mean you're going to be getting that same kind of dollar per square foot sale on your house today. So what matters is what the market's doing today, and the prior. Some appraisers really want to stay within 3 months. 3 months of, today's date. So that's my response. It's usually not a popular response, as you can imagine, but that's the reality of things. Sometimes if I'm in a social situation, I really don't want to have the conversation at all. So I'm just like, yeah, that'd be great. And I just move on. If I'm being blatantly honest, that is the truth. Because sometimes I'm like, that person is so far out there. I don't even want to have the conversation.
Erica from Lewisburg writes, if you had not chosen real estate as your career, what would you be doing?
Let's see. That's kind of hard to answer. Well, so I got into this career when I was 23 years old. So almost right out of college. I worked a little bit. I dabbled in a human resources type industry for a job for a short period of time. Did not like it. My intention when I went to school was to get my doctorate in school psychology. So I had a psych degree and education minor. And I ended up doing, I'll try not to make this long. I ended up doing a in kind of an internship as part of a independent study I was doing for my ed minor, and in a school district or a school locally that doesn't even exist anymore. The school was shut down years ago, and I really became kind of disillusioned with some of the things in the education politics about education, stuff like that. So here I was, senior year, like, I'm not even sure if I want to do this. I took my GREs. I was getting ready to apply to grad school. And suddenly I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this. And then it was like that senior, like 22 years old, like, oh, I don't know what to do. I want to do with my life, If I did it all over again, I think I probably would have gotten into academia. Anytime I didn't have to take a required course, I was always taking some type of English class, English lit, English, study of whatever, all different kinds of genres, different kinds of themes, things like that. I actually did an independent study for one of my English professors, as well as the other independent study. So I think I probably would have gotten into academia in some way, shape, or form. I've always had a joke that I'm going to write a book someday. That'll probably never happen. I don't think I actually have a book in me, but but I talk about that because I love to write. So I think it probably would have been something in that field, but we will never know. Now, I will tell you that, there's other things with, when I went to school, there was no such thing as the internet. We didn't even have cell phones. This is, back in the dark ages. So there's so many so many opportunities and different types of careers and things like that. Like, whoever thought that I'd be doing this? This was not even a concept, or at least not for, for most of us, back in the day when I was, growing up. And so there's all kinds of, so I can't say that if some kind of opportunity came my way today that I might not pivot. My mom, when she was 47 years old, went from being a college chemistry professor to becoming a part owner in a municipal bonds firm in New Jersey. And that's where she worked, till she was mid-70s. And that company is still in existence today and has really grown and is booming. So she's always been kind of my example to me that, like, you can pivot at any time in your life if you want. Now, that being said, I am not pivoting right now. I am I am still will stay in real estate because I do love it, but we'll see. We'll see.
Jennifer from Mifflinburg writes, how long did it take you to feel financially stable as a real estate professional?
Again, I started this when I was young, 23, and it took a while. I think part of the reason it took a while was because I was young. I didn't feel really secure in myself. I didn't think people were going to trust me because I was young. They weren't going to take me seriously. They weren't going to trust me with the biggest purchase of their lives. In their financial future. So I think I didn't feel totally secure in that. But the other thing is that I wasn't from here. I was a Bucknell student. And I think with that came certain stereotypes of being a Bucknell student. And I moved here from New Jersey. So of course that has a stereotype. So I think it took me a little while to build up a brand. What I did in those days, what I really did is I dove into, well, first of all, I was handling rentals and property management. So that got me in the door with a lot of investors and things like that, and people who are renting who then decided to buy. So that really helped me build up my business right there. And the other thing is that philanthropy has always been a big thing for me, and I've always liked being involved. So I just dove in to a lot of different philanthropies and organizations that way. And that's how I really started just meeting people and getting involved in the community. And people started seeing my face. I didn't do it necessarily just so I could build up my brand, because that would sound terrible. I actually did it because I was interested in those philanthropies and wanted to support them. But it, by default, it ended up really helping me become part of the community, and people know my name and start to trust me and things like that. So, but I would say it took a little while. I also think that's just a different period of your life when you're literally just starting out, period, no matter what career you're doing. So, I was 23 years old, then I got married, I had children, and, that brings in a whole nother stress of am I going to be able to support my kids? Am I going to be able to, do the things that are going to sustain my family? So it wasn't just about supporting myself. So I think I've always just been an anxious person, but it's been a really good career. Continues to be a really good career. That sounds like I'm retiring. I am not retiring.
David from Elysburg writes, Lisa, what is your advice today to new agents starting out?
So my biggest thing that I tell brand new agents, if they are living in this community, they're not brand new to this community, you already have a huge network. You've been here. You know people. You need to let every single person you know that you are now in the real estate business and make sure they know it. So do a lot of marketing, do a lot of target marketing, get out there in the community, talk to people. I don't care if you walk up and down the main street of any one of these towns and just stop into stores and talk to people and say, yeah, this is what I'm doing. Get on social media. Let people know what you're doing. If you don't have any listings, work with agents in your office and say, hey, can I advertise your listing? It's still your listing, but I'm putting it on my platform. Things like that. In a way, I think it's so much easier to brand yourself now because there is social media than when I started in 1993. So it's a lot easier to put yourself out there. You don't have to wait to be get your photo in the newspaper or something like that. So you got to talk about it and get involved in your community. Start going to the zoning meetings, start going to planning commission meetings, start getting familiarized with your local governments and the authorities, things like that have oversight over things that pertain to the, real estate world. That's about it. Just let everybody know what you're doing. They're not going to call you if they don't know what you're doing.
Edward from Lewisburg writes, did anyone give you terrible advice early on in your real estate career?
Bad advice, I think, would be more things that pertain to this career superseding my personal life. Early on, I was taught that basically, like, I eat, sleep, and breathe this. That sometimes this business was more important than my family. And I think for a long time I ran with that. I'm not saying I literally thought it was more important than my family, but my actions probably kind of showed that, in that I was always at work. I was rarely ever home for dinner when my kids were younger. Now, on the other hand, I was available during the day to like pick them up or drop them off or get into their activities, or I could take time to like go volunteer in their schools. I never missed their plays or their shows, those kind of things. But there were quite a few soccer games I missed. There were particularly things on the weekends that I missed because that's when clients were available. So I was kind of taught that my clients' schedules are always more important than my schedule. And sometimes they are, with modification. You have certain people, like they're getting on a plane to get here and go house hunting. Yeah, you put everything aside and you just block out that time for them, and it's just dedicated to them. And, you know, your family will understand that. If certain people are sucking your time all the time and they're always disrespecting your personal time, it's okay to set boundaries. And at that time, I wasn't taught that it was okay to set those boundaries. So if I was doing that over again, I would change how I did some of those things. Because the funny thing is, once I've learned to set some boundaries, people follow them. They seem to be fine with it. They'll survive if you don't get back to them at 10 o'clock at night when they text you. Or I have one client who I love. He is the nicest guy. He's a businessman, but he texts me all the time at like 6:30 in the morning. And like, if I don't text him right back, he's like, hello, because he knows I'm up, because I made the mistake of telling him that like I get up at like 5. But that's my time. That is my time. That's not business time. And I just tell him, I'm like, you know, I'm going to get back to you, but I'm not getting back to you then. And he respects it, and he's fine with it, and he can wait because, you know, banks aren't open, you know, attorneys' offices aren't open, governmental offices, nothing else is open, you know, so you'll survive if you don't hear from me right away. You know, I'm not your cardiac doctor. So I think that would be the biggest thing. Or spending money on marketing that was just a waste of time. There's certain platforms that are just, well, now they're kind of like non-existent. So, but throwing money at things that like, because you thought your face had to be everywhere. Well, really, you know, you start to be a little bit wiser, and you get advice from, you know, people that own production companies about what to do with those dollars and where it makes sense to spend those marketing dollars and things like that. And you don't have to do everything or spend every penny that you make marketing yourself, because then what's the point?
Becky from Milton writes, Lisa, what is a misconception about the real estate profession that you would like to dispel?
Oh God, just one. That it's all just looking at pretty houses and fun and games, and like it's portrayed like on a sitcom on television. It is not. It is it can be very intense, and getting a sale from the agreement of sale to the closing table can be fraught with a lot of complications. It could be, there's a lot of nuances. You could be dealing with, oh gosh, you could get into some situations where you have to deal with the DEP and sewage enforcement officers and that soils testing. And maybe there's an underground oil tank and you've got issues with that. And you got to go to the zoning office and you got to deal with planning. And of course you have to deal with attorneys and appraisers, and maybe it doesn't appraise. And now you got to negotiate those kinds of things. And all of these things are, you're dependent on a bunch of all other professionals to get back to you, especially if you're dealing with zoning or planning or sewage enforcement officers or things like that. And there's you have to wear a lot of hats, and you have to have enough knowledge about each of those things to be able to have those conversations with those professionals and then represent your client, whether you're representing the seller or the buyer or both, to represent them proficiently and be able to help them get this sale closed to both parties' satisfaction. Let both parties be happy with the results and hopefully spend the least amount of their money in doing it and solving those problems. You could have title issues. I've had to contact parties. I remember having to contact some guy in Kentucky years ago who had recorded an agreement of sale against a property, and it had been missed by several attorneys or titles companies as the property had transferred over the years. And I had to hunt this guy down and convince him to sign a legal document in a place where he hadn't lived in years and he didn't know who I was. He didn't know who anybody was. I had to convince this guy to sign off on this thing so we could close on this sale. I mean, it was really kind of crazy. And it was something that if you waited for the attorney or the title company or somebody like that to do all that, it wasn't going to get done. So I did it. I had another situation where I literally had to hunt down a family Bible to prove that somebody was dead who had owned the home prior. And this property had conveyed several times over the years and had never been caught before. And then somebody caught it, and the bank caught it and wouldn't let it close. And I could not find, there was no death certificate for this person. There was no proof. And I finally, somehow, this is the benefit of living in a little bit smaller area, found a family member in a neighboring town who had a family Bible back in the day where people used to record births and deaths in the Bible. Found it. Somehow they authenticated it and proved that this person had died and no longer had rights to this house. I mean, there's crazy, crazy things that I think the general public would never imagine we have to deal with. Hey, I would love to answer your questions on upcoming episodes of Selling Susquehanna. So please, if you have anything that you think of that you would like to know, even if you think it's kind of far out there, ask me and I will do my best to answer it on the upcoming episodes of Selling Susquehanna.